in the right place now. What's up, guys? How you doing? Good to see you. What's up?
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming together for this discussion on retail market facilities. We have up here on stage, I think, some of the leading C-suite executive talent that are frankly leading the most iconic brands in Utah and shaping our communities even as we speak. You couldn't have a better, more star-studded group of people up here that we have the privilege of hearing from today. I'll let each of them introduce themselves. So we'll touch on a few of the topics as far as relative to national trends, but we're also going to touch on what is happening in Utah and what is so special about these brands that have had a transformational impact on our communities and beyond. Why don't we take it? We'll take it from this side. We'll let each of our panelists tell their stories quick, as opposed to me kind of giving everyone's bios, and then we'll dive into some questions. And I want to open half of this discussion is for you, all of you. So we're going to open up the last half to a Q&A from the audience. Ask your deepest, darkest, most politically incorrect questions. Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Stone with Sportsman's Warehouse. I've been with the organization just about a year, running the company, 145 locations. We go from Fairbanks down to Naples, Florida. So we have a pretty broad base of where we are from the store. Grew up at a young age, 15, starting with Walmart and Sam Walton, and had the opportunity to spend about 28 years at Walmart, a couple years at Cabela's, and then had the opportunity to get over to the Great Valley, the Salt Lake Valley here, and to lead this organization. So real excited to be here. Appreciate the invite from Jeremy, and look forward to it.
I'm Scott Lewis. I'm the president and CEO of Harmons. We're a local grocery store throughout the state of Utah, 90 plus years in business now. I've been with Harmons for 26 years, so a long time in the industry and with Harmons. And yeah, just looking forward to this panel today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Sean Reyes. I thought I was doing a panel on criminal justice reform at the prison, but I guess that's a facility, and last minute I'm helping advise Jeremy on Volcanic and Retail Collective. So he said, you know what, our superstar co-moderator with Brandon Fugel couldn't make it, so we just got to plug somebody in, and here I am. If any of you played sports, this is like an all-star basketball team, and I'm like the wrestler who doesn't really have, probably the least qualified person to talk about facilities and facility growth and expansion. But Brandon is one of my dearest and longest friends. He is the Tony Stark of Utah, and I'm honored to be up here and highlight some of the real movers and shakers and leaders in this space. So Liz, I'll turn the time over to you.
Hi, I'm Liz Finley. I'm the co-founder of Albion. My husband and I started it 13 years ago. We're local to Salt Lake City. We have 2 stores here in Utah. We've got 6 stores total. We're in San Diego, Austin, Dallas, and Scottsdale. And I think we're a prime example of 2 people who probably had no business getting into business. But here we are, and we're super grateful for this opportunity. And thanks for being here. And I'm excited to learn from you guys.
What's up, everybody? How you doing? I did not expect to see this many people here, and that is not why I showed up late. What idiot walks into a panel late? I thought it was at 2:30, and I will just say we launched yesterday the most important product platform since our brand was founded 40 years ago, and today has been insane with media and everything else, but I'm very happy to be here. And I'll just start by saying, let's see, 11 years ago today, I walked into the Traeger office as its CEO, investor and CEO. And 10 years ago, in about 360 days, I realized I had made the worst mistake of my life. 11 years later, I'm still here. I came to Utah 19 years ago. I was a recovering MBA student with a ton of debt, living in San Francisco, paying my $150,000 of debt off, $700 a month over 30 years. And I quit my job, much to my parents' chagrin, and I moved into their basement in Park City, Utah. I came to do a startup, and I will just say it has been an unbelievable journey. I love building businesses. I love product. I love thinking about consumer. I love thinking about how you surprise and delight and create experience. I'm still learning to be a CEO. Like, I love being an entrepreneur, learning to be a CEO. Thrilled to be on this panel. I realized as I walked up here, I saw one customer, and then I realized we have another customer and a neighbor. So
Customer too.
a customer, a retail customer,
Yeah.
and an end consumer.
I have 2 Traeger.
Oh, gosh. This is great to be here.
Awesome.
And hopefully you'll all be customers of all 4 brands at the end of the day.
Well, Jeremy Andrus, one of the greatest leaders in Utah and philanthropists in Utah. If any of you haven't seen the Woodridge unveiling the last 24 hours, it is, and I'm not just saying this, I wish he wasn't here. If we were to talk about what is the most dynamic retail campaign hitting the market during Silicon Slopes, it is Traeger's Woodridge series and how they're going to transform really the industry. They've already transformed it and turned it on its head. But to see the media and the innovative approach to your product offering, it's mind-blowing. I'm just glad I'm not a competitor. If I was competing against this guy, I think I'd just check out. I'd just slip my wrists and call it good. My name's Brandon Fugel. There you go. My name's Brandon Fugel. I'm chairman of Colliers International. We are the largest commercial real estate service provider in the region. We are the fastest growing of the big 3 globally. And we happen to represent more retail space and clients than any other firm in the region. And we've had the privilege of working with really everyone on this panel in some capacity. So it's been fun to see our market, the landscape, both literally and figuratively change and shift so much, especially since the pandemic. Before we get into getting feedback from everyone here, I passed out a little flyer. I thought everyone would want to see some quick statistics. This is literally 1 week old. This is hot off the press. If you want to know what's happening in retail in the United States, just take one glance at this. 4% vacancy, 45 million square feet under construction, 7 million square feet of net absorption. Contrast that with the office market, which is what I focus on a lot of the time. I mean, the office market has been challenging in some places. Some places in the country, especially LA, New York, it's been a post-apocalyptic zombie wasteland. It's been tough. But retailing has never been better. And it's not just your traditional shopping malls, your regional malls. It's grocery-anchored centers that are really setting the pace. I have to give a lot of credit to Harmons, for example. I would say some of our most dynamic centers in Utah and most dynamic retail experiences in our communities are really happening because Harmons has anchored those centers and been the catalyst for what has been some of the most dynamic offerings to date in Utah. So we're really lucky to have this group that really comes from every sector of retailing imaginable to weigh in on this. But I'll start with a question quickly for everyone. Since the pandemic, how has your business changed? Coming out of the pandemic, everyone had to pivot to a degree. There isn't anyone on the planet that didn't have to reevaluate their business strategy based on the challenges that we've seen the last 5 years. How have you come out of that, and what has been the good and the bad? What has been your greatest challenge and your greatest achievement or benefit?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, just the outdoor industry itself coming off of the pandemic was at a high of all highs, and it was no difference for our customer is really a hunt and fish customer, and we sell product that attaches to hunting and fishing. You had a ton of folks not working or saying they were working in some cases as you're going through the pandemic, however you want to phrase it. And you just saw, but I don't think it's different for a lot of industries, but a lot of bad decisions was made about just grabbing anything you could possibly grab, less about the quality, more about the quantity to be able to absorb everything you needed to do to be able to take advantage of the wave that was happening there. As I came in, the wave had crashed, to say the least, and you're in the cleanup mode and kind of the turnaround of ensuring that you get back to a quality and you get back to the core of your goods, which is working well today. But it was a rocky road because I think, Walmart, we used to say, the sunny days are when you make your toughest decisions in a company, not waiting for it to rain and make a tough decision. Is the sunniest days is when you take advantage of it. And I think as we look back as an organization, that there was a lot of sunny days that we probably could have done things different, but there's no rearview mirror. You look at it, you go, now you're in a position to be able to say, get back to your core of a great hunt, fish customer and ensure that you have your quality right and your service right to meet the needs and expectations. So it's cleaning up well. We're in a really good position, be in a much better position as we end this coming year in 25. But I think that short-term thinking versus long-term thinking, you've just always got to keep that in mind, and that's sunny versus rainy. And it was very sunny for a couple years, and you couldn't get enough of the product, and you let some things go, and then you wake up and you go, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah, and as you can all imagine in the grocery industry, very much a lot of the same, right? Just a tremendous amount of growth throughout those years. It helps when your main competitor restaurants are closed and shuttered. So that's for the most part. So, but yeah, really just amazing couple years of growth and really just doing everything to keep up. As you can imagine, in our industry, we're one of the few still left in with the doors open, as a required industry, in our country. From a challenge standpoint, managing that growth, when you have that much growth in such a short time, it's really easy to lose, your fundamentals, and for us, that's quality and experience, because the business is coming as fast as you can care for it. But as that changed and coming back down, getting back to that experiential, those quality, to the core principles that have made Harmons the Harmons brand and who we are, and that's been tough. It's been tough, given the employment situation here in Utah. The low unemployment rates has compounded that as well. So, really some great wins with the growth, but a lot of challenges that have come post the last couple of years with that, getting things turned around.
So for Albion, I think pre-pandemic, we've talked a lot about the hard times that Dave and I had experienced that actually made Albion come to be in the first place. And I think COVID was probably one of the greatest things that could have happened to our company for a variety of reasons. In that, as difficult as the situation was, it really forced us to focus on product, inventory, and our team. And I think initially it was, March 11th is the height of spring break, and that's what people know us for, was our swimwear. And the campaign that we had come up with that year that was so brilliant was book the trip, buy the suit. So that had to go by the wayside pretty quickly. Our team was so smart, and we pivoted because we had to into lifestyle wear. And up until that point, our sales had been about 25% swimwear to lifestyle. And so it really gave us an opportunity to just jump on this work from home. Being comfortable at home is just as important. And just making the most of every adventure that you can have in this bubble that you've created for yourself. And so, that was the product part. Inventory was really important for us. We are very fortunate to have our own manufacturing facility in Guatemala. And so we're vertically integrated. So for us, it was really going back to our roots. Back in the day, we were telling some friends last night when we first started Albion, our speed to market was because we could we could launch something on Friday, see how orders went Saturday, Sunday, ship FedEx on Tuesday, and then ship to the customers on Thursday. So it was a really quick turnaround. And when airports were closed and you couldn't ship with Delta or Maritime, we went back to shipping with FedEx again. And it was great because we were able to control our inventory levels at a time that was really uncertain. And I think what was good for us was when 22 came, you're doubling sales in 2021. When 22 came, we were really, we had the opportunity to be smart about our inventory, and we were able to not have to have all of this overstock and in products that we weren't sure that we would be able to sell. And then the third thing was the team. And for us, it was really important. Again, I don't know how many of you guys know our story, but the reason why Albion is here today is because we went through a really, really hard time helping my parents with their factory in Guatemala. And they had to let go of their team, 1,500 people, and it was a really difficult thing for us to experience firsthand and see, what happens to founders and what happens to the team when you have to do something like that. And so for us, it was, how do you make sure that your team is taken care of? And I think it created an environment where I hope even today that our team knows that they're our priority, making sure that they know that their needs are taken care of, that their families will be taken care of, and that we're all in this together. So lots of different facets, I think, to a post-COVID world. But it's been a learning experience, but I'm grateful because I think we don't only have to talk about those hard Guatemala times now. We can talk about what COVID taught us, and I think that's really good for us as a brand as well.
I love it that it's a deeply personal journey for you. You starting your business, getting into retailing was really an answer to the call facing challenges with your family and a massive shift, and you being able to take a tragic situation and turn it into fuel.
I mean, I think
incredible.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs at some point, whether you're living in your parents' basement, that could be a tragedy in and of itself, maybe.
I've moved out.
But I think, at any point you're going to face this decision where you kind of have to decide, are we going all in or are we going to retreat? Are you putting up the white flag? And I think for us, very lucky to have my husband as my business partner where we could make that decision together. And whatever happened, we knew that we would be okay ultimately. But yeah.
Well, nothing against people living in parents' basements. I lived in my mom and dad's basement for a couple of years going through a divorce, and it was humbling. It was
We've
kind of
lived
a
in
reset.
both of our parents' basements at some point. So yeah.
It's character building. Any of you haven't tried it, I hope you don't get to. It was hell. Love my parents, though.
So we had very consistent growth. After acquiring Traeger, we built it from $70 million to $450 million through 2019, heading into the pandemic. And it was really interesting. We were very disciplined. We were very methodical in how we built the team and the culture, and really robust growth. And then we got in the pandemic, and it went straight up. I mean, we grew from 450 to nearly $800 million. And although we knew that wasn't real growth, like that wasn't a sustainable growth rate, I think something happened along the way where we got a little bit unfocused. We started innovating new business models, and everything was in the name of innovation because that's what we believe in as a brand. And we went public in July 29th of 2021. And it was this incredible moment. I mean, I had done it before, but it felt better and it felt different the second time around. And then over the course of 6 months, our business fell off a cliff. We went from, a business worth $4 billion to $400 million. We had way too much debt on our balance sheet. We had, 3.5 turns of leverage turned 12. We had liquidity problems. We had bank covenant problems. And it was deeply painful. There was a personal journey, as we talked about, and that's a story for another day, but I would just say the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. And you feel like 2 decades of running a business, you get to stack hard upon hard upon hard and learn from experience and pattern recognition. I was deeply unhappy for a while, almost I'll say almost broke me, but didn't. And in the business, I knew that if I wasn't a strong, confident, happy leader, I couldn't lead my team through a really tough moment. So the personal journey was awesome. I took away the most important lesson of my entire life, that it's not just professional in nature. I own it for the rest of my life, whatever I do. On the business side, I had to get focused. We got really lean as a business because we had to. And it's interesting when you're forced to do something and you look back and you say, being lean and being resourceful and being scrappy, those were our roots, and we deviated from our roots. And then we said there are 3 things that are sacred at Traeger. And regardless of what we go through, we will protect these with our lives. Number 1 is brand. And I'll say even more than brand, community. We really respect our community. We really believe that what makes Traeger special is the fact that people organize and they self-identify and they feel tremendous pride in what they cooked and how they cared for their friends and their families. So we weren't going to stop investing in our community. We weren't going to make transactional decisions that made us unrecognizable to the people who loved us. The second was product. Product is everything. We invest deeply in product. And I'll say one of the things that I'm most proud of is that when we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, we doubled our product investment. And so what we launched today, or yesterday, I should say, that's the first product that comes out of an entirely new product engine. We had to pivot, we had to rebuild team, and then we had to focus on those things that mattered. And I would say the third thing was culture. I have always deeply believed that culture is what creates outcomes. You have to be capable, you have to be good at process, but the X factor in any organization, what's so hard to copy, is how people show up every day. Show up with the desire to unlock their best selves. And I realized, like in the middle of 22, in sort of the moment that was deeply painful for me, that it was just as painful for everybody else. And that wasn't what our culture was all about. And so I would say that was the trough. That was the trough at Traeger. It was a trough in my professional life. And it's been a rebuild of being very, very deliberate, very focused, and like clawing back little wins. And the little wins mattered because we went 12 months and it was like bad news after bad news after bad news. And it was hard. But what I would say is the learnings were incredible. I prefer winning to learnings, and we're not winning yet. But I love the progress that we're making. And I sort of look back and say, you use the word grateful. I look back, I wasn't grateful in the moment. I'm very grateful now because there are things that we learned that will be the blueprint for the rest of my journey building businesses. And one of the commitments that I made to myself and to my team is that when things get really good again, and they will, when we start winning again, and we will, when money starts falling from the trees again like it did in 2021, like wasn't the best part of everyone's lives, but it was beautiful from a Traeger perspective, we will be just as disciplined then as we are now. And I wish I didn't have to go through that to learn this, but I'm glad I know it now.
It's funny, your story, and it's a good segue to the next question I want to ask on this side of the panel. You looking into the abyss. Everyone has in business as an entrepreneur those moments. And one of my favorite movies ever. It's required viewing in my office, my corner of the office. It's a movie. It was my favorite one in high school. It was called Wall Street. The very end, when Bud Fox, played by Charlie Sheen, is kind of walking in the office and something's wrong, and the old senior guy, Lou Manheim, played by Hal Holbrook, comes and puts his arm around him. He says, I like you, Bud. Let me give you a bit of advice. When man looks into the abyss and sees nothing looking back at him. In that moment, man finds his true character. I freaking loved that moment. It's a sobering moment, and it's so true. I think anyone in business has that moment of truth where you're looking into the abyss and you're facing hardship and you're feeling crushed, and that's where you really find your why and your true character.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask the panel this because I think there may be many of you contemplating facility expansion. And little context. So the reason I know Brandon and many of these folks, last week I retired from public service, so 12 years serving as Attorney General. Some of you may not know, before that, I ran a tech venture fund, Accelerate Ventures with Isaac Jacobson. And often we'd have this scenario where our portfolio companies would get to a certain point, especially on the manufacturing side, where they wanted to expand. And new space seemed like a very logical next step for them. And there was, I think, also sort of a symbol of pride and progress. But we always would go back to, is it absolutely necessary? Have you maximized all of your current processes? Are you optimizing everything using all available resources, whether that be robotics, AI, whatever, before you go out and get new property, no matter how cool that may seem to be or how big the new sign will be showing all of your friends on the freeway. And so quickly, I wanted to just throw it out. You don't all have to answer. Any one of you can. But for those who are thinking about expansion, have there been times where you were ready to pull the trigger? And I realize that the thrust of this is about,
And don't
acquiring
knock
new
the
property.
signs. There's a lot of value in signage.
I'm not knocking them at all, bro. You are the man because of those
If anything,
signs.
we keep the sign company in business.
But it's a fair question.
Greedy
Right?
bastards,
I mean,
too.
to play on the theme that you brought up, Jeremy, of resourcefulness, scrappiness, and leanness. Was there a moment where, again, you had the temptation to be like, hey, let's go expand, and then maybe rethought that because of optimization that you hadn't considered before, or ways to, maximize current assets?
So that's an interesting one for us. We moved into a new headquarter. We started building a new headquarter office during the pandemic and renovating an old building. And I've thought a lot about how does a business get run post-pandemic? Like, how do people come together? How do we collaborate? How do we benefit from, these spontaneous interactions that don't happen over Zoom? And we actually had a moment where we had sublet our old office. We were building our new office, and we had to put our shovels down because we ran out of, the only sacred cash was to pay payroll and pay our factories. And so we moved into a building that was free because that's what we could afford.
Equivalent of your parents' basement from a business standpoint.
My parents charged me $150 a month, so it was cheaper. And it was a building that said office furniture showroom on 4th West and 5th South. And I remember Morgan Stanley coming to visit me, and we'd gone public 6 months before, and they're driving around like, we can't find your headquarters. Like, we only see this office building, this office furniture store. I'm like, that's it. Come on in. And we made a very conscious decision that we didn't believe in a distributed workforce. Now, we also, I will say, I was in office every day because that's how culture and collaboration and innovation happen. We also hired some of our best people outside of Utah, but I'm trying to bring them back in. I want people together. I think, you invest so much in your business and you invest so much in payroll. The investment to bring people together in a space that inspires them is it's the best thing that we've done. Our new space is expensive. Our board pushed us hard. It's like, do you really need this? And the answer is yes. And I haven't regretted it for a second.
Brilliant answer. And by the way, your culture is amazing. Your people love you. They love the mission. I've been around there. If you haven't forgotten, about 12 years ago, you activated that full loyalty to beat me in that acai bowl contest, and the Jeremy sold like 5,000 and the General sold like 500.
It was a good day.
Because your people were like, Jeremy's got to win. We've got to win. But no. So great answer to the question. A lot of times it is worth the squeeze to expand and to create new opportunities.
So with Harmon's and Sportsman's Warehouse, what can you think of an abyss moment of looking in the abyss, or a moment like Jeremy had where you're pivoting to a degree and pulling back before making any major moves and next steps?
Well, grocery, I think as most people know, we were maybe last to the online grocery sales party. Pre-pandemic, it was just a very small percent of groceries sold online, in our country. And at the pandemic, that changed drastically. And, our stores became mini fulfillment centers. And, and a little bit kind of to your question, Sean, we learned how to do a lot more business out of our existing facilities without just expanding, adding more space. And that taught us how to do that from an online perspective, but it challenged us to go back and realize that there's other opportunities to do that within we have a small distribution facility, that maybe we don't need to expand it. We just need to think differently there. And really it was a lesson from the pandemic in that, when business, was up 30-40% overnight, and you have to learn how to sell groceries online in a period of 90 days, having no experience having done so, you'll learn a lot. And it was a good, powerful lesson that we're still looking at today as we continue to grow.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's just thinking about it coming off of, the pandemic. Part of Sportsman in the past, the growth strategy was around how many stores can we open, and coming off the success of the pandemic, decision was like, we'll have a huge growth strategy to grow. But I mean, the underlying fundamentals of the business wasn't good. I'm a true believer in, you've got to get that right before you're in a position to where you grow. And sometimes you're in a public company and you can take a stance of one way or another. And this way was his top line growth, not comp store sales growth. And we had to get back to fundamentals of how do we shift this, sweat the current assets we have, get the fundamentals of the business right, the balance sheet in a much better position to afford us the opportunity. You have two options. You can either build stores or you can put stores on Wall Street and buy back, and you can make a decision on what you want to do there. You have two building blocks that you can utilize. But my prior, the Abyss, I ran Hertz during the bankruptcy, and kind of like when you say your darkest moment, and 90% of your revenue of $17 billion done across the globe is dependent upon airplanes landing, and that was the Abyss, that we had 500,000 cars across America, with a lien on 80% of them, and 95% of them were parked, and we were paying to park them, and taking in no revenue. And it was that moment, and as Jeremy was sharing that, we had to reduce staff, but we made a decision, that small and scrappy, that, hey, if we're taking 70% of our staff out to be able to survive, to get through to the other end, we as an executive team, we're going to be 70% smaller as well. We're going to take significant pay decreases until we get to the other side of it. And that scrappiness and being able to build back slowly and to look at the business differently, it all came together and put us in a really good position to exit. I always say there could be a Harvard study on us getting through the bankruptcy. There's probably Harvard studies being done now on how to purchase EV cars that the customers don't want. And, when 10% of America is buying them, and you need to rent cars at 95% utilization, that's a hard pill to swallow. And different story, different day, maybe a book someday as we think about it. But those decisions that you make in those darkest times on what you do. But I think, Jeremy, as you mentioned, you get into a position that those learning lessons that you have that will be taught, it's the hardest in the moment, but then you look back in retrospect 2 to 3 years later and go, these will be the lifelong, not just work memories, from a professional standpoint, but the decisions that you're making and how do you apply them to different things in your life. Sometimes it takes the darkest of the dark before you see the light. And I think there's a lot of similarities there.
I feel like this question has gone so many different directions, but I
love it.
I would say for us, I think I would have expected us to probably have more stores now than we actually do. And I think 2020 taught us a lot of lessons, and surprisingly, rents kind of went through the roof. And for us, our strategy was always to be in the best malls in the best cities and where our customers are. And so, yeah, rent at Westfield in La Jolla is really high, and rent at City Creek is high, and rent in Scottsdale Quarters is high. And so for us, it's all about location. And so if we couldn't find an insane location that could justify the rent, it wasn't worth it for us. And so 3 of the malls that we're at were next door to Apple, and it's been great for us. We have that foot traffic, and so I think you just have to be really strategic and understand what your end goal is. Is your end goal to build community? Is your end goal to look at your stores and realize that, they're going to be bringing people in that, it's a billboard maybe. And that was it. Honestly, for 2022, retail was not great. And so those stores had those big signs, and they were really important for us to bring in that new customer acquisition. So, yeah.
Wow. I've had a lot of looking into the abyss moments in my career. Probably one you get a kick out of. You were at Cabela's at one time. We did all of the national site selection from coast to coast for Cabela's when they were in their major expansion clip. And my partner is an avid sportsman. He has a bunch of decapitated heads on his wall in the office, and he, it's just incredible taxidermy in our office. But we tied up some real estate, and I'll keep this really short. He told me, my partner, who is really tight with the Cabela's brothers, said, look, we're about ready. We're going to fly everyone out on private jets, and we're going to close this deal in Hammond, Indiana, across from Gary, Indiana, on the freeway. And we're getting ready to fly him out. He says, do me a favor, Brandon. We're going to have the whole executive team there. We're going to close this deal. We've got 6 others lined up. Show up. Don't show up with the suit tomorrow. Leave the suit and tie at home. And I'm more formal. My primary business has been Class A office and headquarters. And this was a special project. I was the one who had the jet. So I got to go along for the ride and do the nationals. Well, I woke up the next morning and I just put on slacks and a white shirt, button-down shirt, no tie, but I wore cufflinks. And the next day we got a call. My partner got a call from the head of real estate with Cabela's, and he said the CEO was so incensed, was so pissed off that someone on their team had the audacity to show up with cufflinks. And when he checked and he found that I wasn't a card-carrying member, I was not a catalog member, and that I showed up not on brand, he said, that guy does not reflect our culture. Either he's off the account or we're changing brokerage. So my partner had to call me in. I thought we were going to have a celebratory lunch that day. He called me in, and I got terminated. I got fired from the National Cabela's account because I did not know my audience, and I was ignorant. I again had the audacity to show up with cufflinks on, thinking that I was dressing down, and I was pretty depressed about it. I thought it was a good learning experience. But anyways, well, let's see.
You recovered well.
Yeah.
You recovered well.
Yeah, we're okay, but let's open it up. Let's open it up for some questions. Just yell. We're in it. What isn't this the speakeasy? So we're in a cozy place. This is a safe place too. So we should, yeah.
I'm pretty sure nobody gonna attack me. So the question is, you guys were talking about hard time, good time, about the character, about the products, but you didn't say any word about the technology. Which role technology played in this process for all of your products and your businesses? Because as I know from my perspective, because we're a software development company, that from 2020 everybody start building some specific custom solutions for their businesses to grow up. Did you do the same?
Wow. Jeremy, you're the model here. I mean,
So it's an interesting question. The answer is no. We believe that our consumers love us because of brand and product experience. So we don't develop custom technology. We're integrators of technology. So at a product level, what we launched is so significantly better in terms of the technology. It's like crazy to say technology can make food taste better, but we don't ever talk about technology. We don't geek out on technology because our consumers care about a cooking experience. How does it taste? What's the texture? What's the color? How does my family react when I serve them? So a lot of technology integrated into the product, but for experience reasons. In terms of enabling technologies, whenever we have built custom solutions, over time we have regretted it. And so we tend to, there's always some customization, and we're leaning into AI for some interesting things in terms of how we address a consumer's need when they call in, how we proactively know what they're calling for before we've picked up the phone. But in terms of the technologies that enable our business, we use off the shelf and we customize as much as we have to, but we know why our consumers love Traeger, and we try and be really, really simple and straightforward in everything that we use to enable the operations or the back end of the business.
I would say too, I think, when, for example, if we go back to the pandemic, there's not really time, I think, to find a technology that's going to help you solve the problem that was at hand. And so, same thing, we had to kind of look at what we had at our disposal and then make it work and make adjustments accordingly. So for us, we had 6 stores that we couldn't have open, but we had a bunch of inventory in our stores. And something that we were able to do that a lot of our competitors couldn't do is we did turn our stores into fulfillment centers. So for us, it was working with what we had, working with Shopify, even though it really couldn't cater to exactly what we needed, working with our other back-end systems, working with our customer service platform to be able to make sure that that could expand. We used all of our stylists became customer service representatives. That's how we kept them busy. So the online service exploded, and we needed people to be able to cater to all of those people. But again, we didn't have the opportunity to be able to have a platform that already could function the way that we needed it to when that emergency happened. But I think it's important to have team members who are going to be creative problem solvers to figure out what do you have and how can they make it work to their advantage.
I just want to add one other thing, which I think is interesting. It's not that we have leaders that are always looking for new technology solutions, and I find over and over and over that if you don't dial in people and process, technology doesn't help. And so when people and process are dialed in, and then you find a good fit from a technology perspective, that's when it works.
Definitely. Technology is just a tool.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, I talked about the shift, learning how to sell groceries online and in a short window required a lot of technology, and to keep up with that much growth that happened over a 2 to 3 year period we had to implement technology. We're not an industry that is known, especially if you're not a really large national grocer, you're probably not known for technology within it. We do a little bit of development in that on our own, but we've also learned throughout this process that we're much better at selling groceries and relying on and finding the right partners to help us with that. We've learned some painful lessons along the way trying to do some of those things, including, some people, those of you that live in Utah, we still have a HarmonsGrocery.com website out there that, we're not particularly proud of, that we still have work to do. That's what happens when we've taken that technology piece versus finding a best in class or a partner that suits our culture and our brand, we think.
Yeah, I think that's the one really large investment that was made during the sunny days during the pandemic was, building a platform at Sportsman's to allow purchases to be made and picked up in the store. Up to 20% of our overall revenue comes through the store itself, and 70% of that, in a lot of cases, firearms, and due to the regulation of it, you're going to have to come in to go through the background process. So where we skew really heavy within the firearm piece of the business. The system was there to allow it, but then what we really had to work on, you go back to the human component, is how do you make that less transactional? You put the software in to be able to drive people, but it just becomes the same as a point of distribution, only you're going to a store without being able to have kind of what I refer to as a rare experience. For a customer to have a rare experience, you have to give it that. So I think there's the conduit of the technology is great, but then ultimately it comes back down to the people and the touch of the human, to how do you make that a differential experience that you have there. So I would say there was, and the company prior to me had done a good job during the pandemic to create that. What we needed to really work on was to take the transaction out of it and make it a complete solution for the consumer.
Another question?
Yeah, I would love to hear some insights on vertical versus lateral movements and when you want to make either type of movement, right? I would say, my understanding, typically vertically is more lucrative, but there is a time to move laterally. So it's like with Traeger, right? When you guys were in your dark hours, was that, hey, we need to kind of just, buckle down on our core forward and make some vertical moves, or is that some lateral shifts that you had to make? Was it ever just fishing and then you moved laterally to hunting, and why, and how do you know when to do that without sacrificing brand identity? Similar questions for all.
So I'll just say quickly that what we learned is you have to be really, really good in your core business to justify expanding out from there. And the brands that I admire, that I buy, that I study, they're ones that do a few things really, really well. And when they choose to do something in an adjacent space, they don't throw things against the wall. They are so measured in consumer insight work, understanding what they're building, why they're building it, how to launch it. And so what we realized as we were, for example, we launched a food business, a direct-to-consumer barbecue in a box that had your Australian Wagyu brisket, four semi-prepared sides, gloves, a playlist, butcher paper, rubs. It was incredible, but we weren't great at engineering wood pellet grills. And we were so far from exhausting our capabilities there. What I believe is that expanding into other areas takes a lot of time for it to be accretive to the business. And if you plan this in such a way that you're innovating over long periods of time, you're testing, iterating, failing fast when it doesn't work, but you have a very long runway for it to really be an accretive part of your business, that's how great brands are patient. And how do you know? Well, for us, it's stepping back and just understanding what is our TAM, what is our channel opportunity, how long is our runway of household penetration, product within our category, and distribution, and then you start planning your expansions 5, 6, 7, 8 years out. Of course, they're sort of they're low resolution that far out, but you start to work on it, and the ability to pick things up and put them down over many years, so that you're never rushed to build something high quality, innovative, and fast. That's how I think brands succeed. Get dialed in the core, and just leave yourself a ton of runway to be successful when you're doing something that's not right down the middle of the fairway.
I totally agree. I think you're spot on. For us, it was nailing that one-piece swimsuit. That was, I think, what we were known for. And we focused on that for really like 5 or 6 years. And then a lot of other competitors came into the market, and that's when we started expanding into different areas. But again, slowly but surely, and making sure that we really nailed that product. I would say you also want that growth, right? And you want to be able to enter new markets. And I do think that that's where really smart brand-to-brand collaborations can come into play. So you don't have to be, a master at aprons, right? But you can work with
Head lead better.
Thank you. I was like, what's the name? Yeah, right. And then you get that whole other market. So there's different ways to do it where I feel like it can be a win-win. You're not really investing too much, maybe time and effort of your own resources, and you're kind of leaning on the professionals in that area, and you're getting those new customers as a result.
So is there a Traeger collab coming with bathing suits?
Oh, yes,
and
floral
wood-fired
print
grills
on top of the barbecue. What do
You want to take
think?
this offline? I have some ideas.
We'll talk to Kristen.
Let's see. Are we almost out of time, or do we have time for one more question? Okay. White hat.
Yeah, in terms of the actual real estate, can you kind of speak to leasing versus purchasing, building versus repurposing?
Retail real estate is tricky, and all of the real high-profile, high-traffic locations are they're not available for purchase for the most part. I mean, and most retailers don't want to own their real estate. They don't want to have their money in brick and mortar in a lot of cases. They want to be able to be quick and nimble and to downsize, to abandon sites that don't work for them, etc. I mean, can you imagine if Blockbuster Video owned all their locations across the country? They just trying to eject out of those.
Who's that?
I know. I'm dating myself. But I mean, gosh, thousands of locations. But I think leasing affords flexibility that you just can't find anywhere else. But then you have those that have fixed stores, fixed sites, and it does make sense to literally either lease back from yourself or leverage your real estate as an investment strategy. So and it depends on your business. It depends on where you're deploying capital and what kind of risk tolerance you have or don't have. Does anyone want to address that up here? Because everyone has vastly different real estate needs. But most of corporate America, most retailers, users are tenants by design. Very few actually end up being stuck owning their own brick and mortar for a reason. But there are cases where owning really does make sense from an investment strategy and long-term valuation approach. Yeah.
In terms of ownership and relating that to the digital world, so as you go build in-house solutions so much, how do you seek out, out-of-house solutions, and how comfortable do you feel in terms of like your own data ownership? Because that data, as it go on, kind of owns your business. So there's kind of a trade-off. How much does your business get away from you as that data?
Anyone want to take that?
Well, I think it's a great question. I mean, you've got to own it, and I think it's a delicate situation as once you're owning it and who you partner with as you're parsing that out to be able to get very granular on how you're using that to be able to go back to the consumer and use that. And there's always going to be that debate. Am I using that technology in-house? Am I using a partner to be able that it's a subject matter expert? We're really good at hunt and fish. I can promise you we're not great at being the next snowflake. So we look at it on what partners can we use to be able to utilize it, and then for us to be able to have the piping and the conduit to ensure that we're piping it the right way that we want to be able to segment the customers to where we're not blasting them with things that we know is not relevant to them. So I think it's very, very important in how you can parse that out. But to some of the points that's been made earlier, just know your strength. And if you're sitting here, in our case, a specialty retailer that leans toward a hunt and fish customer, our strength today is not that technology component of it as far as the parsing, but there's just great companies out there that can really help you with that and to ensure that you're being productive and usage of your capital that you're spending in your IT investment.
All right. Well, thank you. Want to thank Albion, Traeger, Sportsman's Warehouse, Harmons. I mean, you think about the landscape here and those that are really moving the needle, and they're sitting right here on this stage. And really appreciate all of you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.
And our moderator, Brandon Fugel. We really appreciate you coming down, Brandon. On behalf of the Retail Collective team, thank you for being here. Quick announcement. We have founders from Divvy, Pattern, Redo, Clearlink, and Volcanic about to start at 3:15 on the 3rd floor. So if you're interested in that, please make your way up to the 3rd floor. But thanks and take care.